carefully written articles on relevant cultural issues that you can quickly forward to others. The Stand is a beacon of light to a society in need of direction. Visit afa.net/The Stand.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio
and Urban Family Talk.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media
and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Good evening. Welcome to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. I'm your host, Abraham Hamilton III. I'm excited to be with you as we are now in 2018. I know many of you are getting used to writing 2018 in all your documents. I know what the struggle is like when you write the previous year because you're so used to doing it. But we are in the year 2018 now, so we might as well get used to saying that. I want to give those of you sometimes, and it's true, I don't do a good enough job oftentimes giving advance notice for these types of things. But those of you who are listening in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, Jamestown, North Carolina, I want to give you some information so you can mark your calendars accordingly. And those of you who are in that area, I will be participating in an apologetics conference in March on the 23rd and 24th of March, hosted by Truth for a New Generation, which is a ministry by AFR's own Alex McFarland. That it is an apologetics conference that will be hosted at the Life Community Church in Jamestown, North Carolina. Some of the speakers include Josh McDowell, author of The Evidence That Demands a Verdict, in my opinion, one of the most important apologetics books you could ever own concerning the historicity and the accuracy of the Bible, chock full of research. I mean, when you get through with this resource, not only will your faith be bolstered, not only will you have an accurate grasp on why we can rely on the Bible, but it will enable you to be a more effective witness for the gospel. Additional speakers include Alex McFarland, who I mentioned as well, who is an apologist, author, co-host of the Exploring the Word program here on American Family Radio, 3 to 4 p.m. That's right, on AFR Central Standard Time. They will also have Todd Starnes from Fox News, Lauren Green, who is the chief religion correspondent from Fox News. We also will have apologist J. Warner Wallace and evangelist Kamal Salim. And Kamal, who himself was a former Muslim jihadist who was converted to Christianity. He will be there at the Truth for a New Generation conference. And the theme of the conference is Save a Nation. Save a Nation. And in addition to those speakers, I will also be one of the speakers at this particular conference. It will be March 23rd, 24th, in Life Community Church in Jamestown, North Carolina. For more information, you can go to truthforanewgeneration.com. That's truthforanewgeneration.com. So if you're interested, you can go there, get all the info you need. And I said I got to do better at sharing these things. So I'm endeavoring to do that by providing that information to you. I would love to meet you if you're in those areas and you're listening to the program. I'd love to shake your hand, hug some necks. I enjoy doing that. And I think this conference is timely because if you've been listening, I've been talking about just the importance in light of recognizing the time and the season that we are in, being committed to sharing the gospel. And I believe this conference will be one that will help you be further equipped to do that effectively in the time that we are in today. So truthforanewgeneration.com, Save a Nation Conference. You definitely want to be there. You don't want to miss this particular conference. Well, we will start the program today in John chapter 4, where, this just has so stirred my heart. I'm going to focus in on verses, I would say 27 through 42. This is the account where Jesus ministers to the woman at the well, and this follows Jesus leaving Judea and heading toward Galilee. And the Bible records in King James that Jesus must needs go to Samaria. My ESV said, and he had to pass through Samaria. And Jesus does so with such specificity, such timeliness, that he arrives at the well at noon before the woman at the well arrives there. That just blows my mind, because I believe that the Lord intentionally goes to Samaria to encounter the woman at the well, and he does so well, no pun intended, that he's there before the woman even arrives. So Jesus is not only there on time, he's early. Well, you have the entire encounter where Jesus engages with this Samaritan woman, which at that time period was unheard of because Jews did not interact with Samaritans. And so you ask, well, how did the term Jews get developed? Well, if you go back in Israel's history, you'll remember when Rehoboam, Solomon's son, became king, the kingdom of Israel was divided into two separate nations. The northern kingdom became known as the nation of Israel, while the southern kingdom became known as the nation of Judah. People from the nation of Judah ultimately, or later on in time, were referred to as Jews, and the people who were the descendants from Judah were known as those to be more pious, more connected, more committed, because again, if you remember in Israel's history, the northern kingdom of Israel was exiled under the Assyrian regime in 722 BC. That happens prior to the southern kingdom being exiled in 586 BC. Well, the northern kingdom was basically regarded as apostates by those who were descendants of the southern kingdom. And so as history progressed, time progressed, those who were descendants of the southern kingdom regarded those who were descendants of Samaria as being, half-breeds. Those are not being as authentically Jewish as those of the southern kingdom. So at the time that Jesus invaded human history, Jews did not interact with Samaritans. That's part of the explanation of Jesus providing the parable of the Good Samaritan. But going further, Jesus engages her, discusses what could only be regarded as her questionable sexual and marital history, and their conversation concludes right at about verse 25 in John chapter 4. I'll just read those just for context purposes, where verse 25 says, "The woman said to him, 'I know that the Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. And when he comes, he will tell us all things.'" Verse 26, Jesus responds to her by saying, "I who speak to you am he." This follows Jesus discussing using the well as an opportunity to describe a spring of living water that never runs dry. He said, "You who draw from the well and drink from this well, you will thirst again. But if you drink the water that I am offering you, you'll never be thirsty again, because it is a spring of living water, as opposed to being just natural water." With him talking about living water gives the indication to her that it's something like a geyser or a spring, but Jesus isn't talking about liquid H2O, like water boy, high quality H2O. He's talking about eternal life being made accessible. And I'll pick up right at verse 27. Man, I got to keep going. Time is going fast. Verse 27, and I'll read through, then I'll make some comments. "Just then, his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, 'What do you seek?' or 'Why are you talking with her?' So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, 'Come and see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?' They went out of the town and were coming to him. Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, saying, 'Rabbi, eat.' For he said to them, 'I have food that you do not know about.' So the disciples said to one another, 'Has anyone brought him something to eat?' Jesus said to them, 'My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. Do you not say there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. Already the one who reaps is receiving wages and gathering fruit for eternal life, so that sower and reaper may rejoice together. For here the saying holds true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you did not labor. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labor.' Many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. 'He told me all that I ever did.' So when the Samaritans came to see him, they asked him to stay with them. And he stayed there 2 days, and many more believed because of his word. They said to the woman, 'It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this indeed, the Savior of the world. Got a few minutes. Let me get right to it. First things first, I want to say from this description, this understanding, when Jesus is talking about him having food that his disciples didn't know about. If you remember in the beginning, when Jesus left Judea heading to Galilee, the scripture already recorded that he was tired and he was wearied when he arrived at the well. Okay, he was already physically tired, so his disciples expected him to be hungry and thirsty. And so when he responded, I have food that you know not of, he used the food discussion to say, listen, I have a source of satisfaction and self-fulfillment and achievement that is not common, that is not natural, that is not physical. I would submit to you that those of you who are followers of the Lord Jesus Christ and you're hunting and you're searching for purpose and searching for fulfillment in life, I will tell you that you will experience no greater fulfillment on this side of eternity save that of becoming a believer yourself, becoming a Christ follower yourself, and loving your spouse and your family. There is no greater fulfillment than being effective in obeying the will of God for your life, which includes proclaiming the gospel. When Jesus says, look, don't you guys know, you read the natural times, you see, hey, 4 months until the harvest. I am saying, don't we recognize what's happening around us? The increase of lawlessness, the things that are happening on the national stage. Don't you recognize that time is getting short? We must be about our Father's business. Many of us who, as we're driving, some of you are driving, some of you are listening, and you're hearing my voice right now. Many of us have neighbors we've never conversed with. Many of us have relatives that we are very reticent to share the gospel with. I'm encouraging you in this year to go beyond where you've been before and make that next step. Go knock on your neighbor's door and see whether or not they may be found in your eternal family, because you never know unless you go and ask. You never know unless you go and seek. How much longer will we go living, driving in our neighborhoods, driving by people that we see on a regular basis, having one, no concern of their eternity, and two, having no knowledge of where they may spend eternity? Let this be the time where the Lord stirs your heart to partake of that food that Jesus said his disciples didn't know about, which was to obey the will of the Father in heaven. But let me keep going. Following the encounter with Jesus at the well, the Bible records immediately the woman goes right from the well back to her hometown, telling everybody in her hometown that I met a man. Come meet a man. Come find a man. And the Bible records that the people were drawn because of the authenticity of the woman's testimony. I want to tell you that God doesn't require you to be an expert level evangelist like some Josh McDowell or Ravi Zacharias or some of the big name people you may be aware of. God has uniquely wrapped you in the packaging that he wanted. Don't be ashamed of your own testimony. Very often, many of us, especially when we've been saved for a little while, we start nipping and tucking our testimony because we don't want people to really know how we were before Christ. Listen, it doesn't matter. It's before Christ. It's before Christ. And the reality is, if we are those who want to try to hide and amend our testimonies a little bit, could it be that there's a little hint of pride lurking around where we want to present ourselves in such a fashion to where people won't see us as different? The thing that these people were able to latch onto, because they know, I know her from Samaria. When Jesus confronted her about her questionable sexual history and her marital history, that was a part of the testimony that drew the rest of the Samaritans to come out to meet Jesus. And they explained that the thing that initially caught their attention and caused them to come to meet him was the effectiveness and the impact they felt from her testimony. The Bible tells us in the book of Revelation that we overcome how? Twofold, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimonies. The blood of the Lamb is the mechanism by which we overcome salvifically. But the word of our testimony is not exclusively meant for us. Oftentimes, the Lord will use our testimony to make an impact and an inroads in those that are around us. Lastly, they said that now when we initially came, it was because of your testimony. But now, because we have had an audience with him ourselves, we now believe because of our own witness. The last thing I want to say in this regard, do not underestimate the impact that the gospel can have in a city, in a region, in a family. Because of this woman's willingness to use her own life as a platform for the gospel, the entire village that she came from was able to experience a newfound revelation. This is going to be related to something I'm going to get to later in the program, but I want to remind us, do not underestimate the Lord's power to draw. Do not underestimate the Lord's ability to save. Have we factored God out of our political calculations of what would happen in the nation, about what would happen in the state, about what would happen in the region? If we have factored God out, I would submit to you that we're on the wrong side of the deliberation.
Backpacks and number 2 pencils. Hi, I'm Matt Staver with Freedom's Call. After a long Christmas break, many public schools are back in session this week or certainly this month. This means that Liberty Counsel is again ready to defend the rights of students in public schools. Whether it's sharing religious notes during lunch or student-led prayer, or perhaps even the persecution of teachers for living out their faith outside of the school. Liberty Counsel is there educating and, if necessary, litigating to preserve religious freedom and freedom of speech. We all have students in our lives, and these students are our future. They don't lose their constitutional rights and freedom at the doors of their school. So make sure you know the broad range of religious freedom and educate your local school administrators on how to protect these precious rights. Check out Liberty Counsel's booklet called Patriot's Handbook of Religious Freedom in Public Schools. You can get Patriot's Handbook of Religious Freedom in Public Schools on our website at lc.org.
Here's Dan Celia with today's Stewardship Moment.
Luke 6:12 and 13 says, "Now it came to pass that in those days that he went out to the mountain to pray and continued in prayer to God all night. And when it was day, he called his disciples to himself, and from them he chose 12, whom he also named apostles." Listen, before we make decisions regarding our financial stewardship, what is it we do in order to come to a conclusion? I hope it's pray. If Christ prayed all night, I wonder how much longer we ought to be praying before a decision.
You've just heard a Stewardship Moment with Dan Celia of Financial Issues Ministry, helping you plan, give, and invest wisely. For more information, log on to financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
It's a brand new year. Are you ready to experience God's best for your life? This week on Pathway to Victory, Dr. Robert Jeffress presents an empowering new mini-series called Experiencing Your New Beginning. Discover how to move past fear and negativity and make 2018 your best year yet. This Monday through Friday on Pathway to Victory with Dr. Robert Jeffress.
Pathway to Victory, each weekday morning at 6 o'clock Central on American Family Radio.
Hey family, this is Lauren from Living Life with Lauren, and I want you to know just how much I appreciate you, and I count it an honor and a privilege to bring you interviews weekly with godly speakers, teachers, and authors that point us all to a closer walk with Jesus. Thank you for listening, telling your friends, downloading our podcast, and of course connecting with me on Facebook, Living Life with Lauren, and Lauren Kitchen Stewart. I would love to hear from you. We're heard every Saturday evening at 8 Central Time on American Family Radio. Join us.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The people of Iran are crying out for freedom. All freedom-loving people must stand with their cause. The international community made the mistake of failing to do that in 2009. We must not make that mistake again.
Ambassador Haley, very strong there today. Brett, she said the U.S. would seek an emergency session at the UN to express support of the people there in Iran. Obviously, that is a position supported by the Trump White House.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here in American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Abraham Hamilton III hosting the program. Well, I'm the host of the program all the time, so I sound like I'm a guest host. But the host of the program. And that was our UN ambassador, the U.S.'s UN ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, discussing the need for the U.S. to have a different posture concerning the protests that have swept across Iran, to contrast that with the policy that was advanced by former President Barack Obama. Now, what's interesting in this regard is that it seems that the protests that are happening now carry with it a different tone and tenor. I have before me here an article that includes an interview from Dr. Michael Leedon from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, which is a nonprofit policy institute focusing on foreign policy and national security. And the thing that is interesting to me is based on Dr. Leeden's interview, he's sharing that one of the key things that distinguishes this protest, which is now, it's been going on now about 6 days. There's several things, but one of the key things to start off this particular segment that distinguishes it from the 2009 protest is that at last count, the protests include 31 cities across Iran. Now, that is unique because the size and scope of the protests in 2009 were primarily confined to Tehran itself, which is the capital of Iran. Now, interestingly enough, there was mucho coverage of the 2009 protests, but there hadn't been as much mainstream talking snake media coverage of this particular protest. And that causes one to quizzically ask, well, I wonder why they won't cover it now. Could it be? I'm just throwing something out. Could it be that the talking snake media didn't want to highlight some of the failures of the Obama administration's foreign policy? Because, you know, there was that unmarked plane that happened to fly to Iran with billions of dollars in francs and euros and dollars, following the nuclear deal that was entered with Iran that was supposedly to take Iran in a different direction. But it seems like not much is changing with Iran in terms of their nuclear ambition, as well as their international fomenting of terrorism, the #1 state sponsor of terror worldwide, and as well as the actual absolutely crushing poverty and unemployment that is happening in Iran itself. An additional component that distinguishes this particular protest from those in 2009 is, and this is what Dr. Leeden said, quote, the protesters in 2009 were upper middle class Iranians who were easily intimidated by the security forces and Iran's political leaders. In fact, the 2009 protesters were described by military analyst Ralph Peters in a Fox Business interview as quote unquote urban elites. Well, according to Dr. Michael Leeden, the protesters today are workers and unemployed, which are much more difficult to squelch and to bring under control. The people who are taken to the streets now, they are bound and determined to bring down this autocratic, repressive regime, which, if you're not aware, the supreme leader in Iran is the Ayatollah Khomeini, who is a Shiite Muslim cleric. They have an autocratic theocracy in Iran, and they have not only participated in attempting to quell this uprising, there have to date been at least 21 people who have been killed, 21 civilians who have been killed in Iran, and as a result of the protest. And the government in Iran has cracked down on social media and internet usage in Iran in an effort to thwart these protests. And to go even further, the judiciary in Iran, as well as the supreme leader and other leaders in Iran, have said that those who are caught and arrested for protesting, they will be charged with sedition and they face death penalty executions. Now, this announcement was made on Tuesday in an effort to quell the protests and the uprisings. And the Iranian Revolutionary Guards have been dispatched by the government in order to try to put the uprisings down. This is the same guard who was dispatched in 2009 that were very effective in causing the protests with the Green Revolution in 2009 to fall by the wayside. But not this time. Even though they have shouts and threats of the death penalty for those who are caught as protesters. So think about that you have a government, a national government, that would execute people for protesting. Sounds like a bastion of freedom, doesn't it? I mean, come on. This is the government that we entered the nuclear deal with. This is the government that we send billions of dollars to by dark of night. Well, in a sign of official concern, getting back here to an article that I'm holding, about the resilience of the protest, the Revolutionary Guard commander, Major General Muhammad Ali Jafari, said he has dispatched forces to Hamadan, Isfahan, and the Lorestan provinces to tackle the new sedition. They're describing it as sedition. Again, you'll see with those references, and those are the three main provinces where most of the casualties have come from to date as well. But you'll see with that dispatch, it shows that there is an expanse of this protest when compared to what happened in 2009. So what I'm saying is that there are two things happening here at this point. I think that the somewhat hesitations to cover this here in America, or even the delays in covering it, were intentional. And secondarily, I think that the potential for this is far more broad than I think most people expect. Following the announcement of the protests, President Trump and the Trump administration have publicly declared the intention to support the protesters at the appropriate time. You've seen the Israeli government as well as the Saudi Arabian government, which is interesting, to say that they are weighing in and supporting the protesters. The audio that I played earlier was our ambassador, Nikki Haley, saying that it's time for those who love freedom to support the protests against this repressive regime. And some interesting tidbits about Iran: while they have a national population that approaches 80 million people, there are 20 million Iranians who live below the poverty line, while the wealthy, including relatives of government officials, they import tens of thousands of luxury cars every year. Now, all of that information is information that I think is important to share. But there's another part of this story that I think is related that is not getting much discussion, even among many conservative media outlets. I love Dr. Michael Brown. He wrote a column on this that is available right now at afa.net. And in fact, all the news and information that you want concerning this particular Iranian protest is available at One News Now. OneNewsNow.com is a great resource. We are covering that in depth. And Dr. Brown has his column up at afa.net on The Stand, where he says there's a story behind the story concerning these Iranian protests. And the story, I believe, could be related to the scriptures I discussed earlier, because something else is happening in Iran, and it's being reported primarily at this point by missiologists. Missiologists are people that follow missions work all around the world, and they were the people who were first to report the upsurge of Christianity in China. Behind what was then referred to as the bamboo curtain, you had Christianity percolating and busting out at the seams before the mainstream media outlets even got wind of it. And the same thing is happening now, because you have people who are on the ground in Iran, evangelists, pastors, those who were former Muslims, who are reporting that there is an upswing. There is a surge of Christian conversions happening amongst the Muslim population in Iran. So let's talk about this. It has been reported that Christianity is catching on like wildfire in Iran at such a clip that as far back in 2006, Reza Safa, who was a former Iranian Shiite Muslim who became a Christian, who is now a pastor, wrote a book in 2006 saying the coming fall of Islam in Iran. Thousands of Muslims find Christ in the midst of persecution. Well, you have the most recent reports, not this report, as recently as 2016, it was being reported that there were several 100,000 Christian converts in Iran. Well, that number now has been boosted to over 3 million Christian converts in Iran. Now, these 3 million Christian converts represent an exponential explosion in the numbers of Christian converts in Iran. So the question I have, that I am posing to you, is that do you think the surge, the boom in Christianity in Iran in such a short period of time. As recently as 2016, the numbers of Christians in Iran was right at about 300,000. Well, between 2016 to 2017, we've gone from 300,000 to 3 million being reported. That is a huge, huge jump in number. The Mohammed News Agency, which is an Iranian Christian news agency, reported as of August 2016, quote, that Christianity has been growing at an exponential rate in the last couple of decades in Iran, causing the Islamic government a great deal of concern. In a most recent expression of their distress, one of the high-profile Islamic seminary officials, Ayatollah Alavi Bujuradi, stated, accurate reports indicate that the youth are becoming Christians in Qom and attending house churches. Qom is one of the big cities in Iran, and are attending house churches, end quote. Now, what I am saying to you is that, well, let me say it this way. Do I think that the boom in Christianity is solely or exclusively responsible for the uprising that's happening right now in Iran? No. I'm not saying it exclusively, but I am saying that you cannot deny that it is happening. I happen to have a personal friend of mine who is an evangelist who ministers in the Middle East. Obviously, I can't tell you his name or the country. But he said this to me about 7 months ago, that we should not misunderstand nor underestimate the surge Christianity is having in the Middle East. That you have people who are devout Muslims who are having dreams about Jesus. That people are finding the evangelists who are evangelizing undercover, secret evangelists in Iran, and people are coming to their homes saying that I had a messenger tell me you had something to tell me. And so you have this boom in Christianity. You have Christian radio stations popping up all over the Middle East, pumping the gospel into Iran, and people are coming to Christ. Am I saying that this is exclusively the cause of the uprising? No. But what I am saying that you cannot deny that the ranks of the people in as many as 31 cities across the country of Iran, I bet that they include Christians. Some of the Christian converts who are under cover of night renouncing Islam and embracing the resurrected Christ. Those who are attending these house churches all over Iran that has got them so nervous that the Revolutionary Guards are being dispatched to the place where they are killing people for protesting. What I am saying is, do not underestimate the impact that the gospel can have. Just as the woman at the well went back to Samaria saying, I met a man who told me everything about me. You better believe you me that these people were saying that I had a dream about this Christ. I heard that you had something to tell me, that they're going back and telling their families how the gospel is impacting them, telling their families that there is a liberty that exceeds that offered by national governments, that causes them to be willing to cast off the bondage of tyranny and oppression and repression and recognize that the way of the Ayatollahs is not the way. We cannot underestimate that. I am saying that I believe that the influence of the gospel in this country is contributing to it, which is why I rejoice that our president and our UN ambassador and the Israeli government and others are saying that not this time. Unlike 2009, we are going to rally to support these protesters. Of course, the economic strain and the poverty and the starvation and these things that are happening in different areas, of course, these are things that are contributing. But I'm saying that they aren't the exclusive contributors. I don't believe. Now, can I point you to a story that would say that? Not necessarily. But what I can do is add 2 plus 2. I see this consistent penchant for a desire for freedom happening in the nation. I see, on the other hand, a consistent influence of the gospel penetrating a nation that has a closure to the gospel in terms of its governmental stance. Which reminds me that in terms of geopolitical stances, the enemy to the United States of America is the governmental structure of Iran, but not the Iranian people. The Iranian people are not our enemies. It is the governmental structure that is shouting death to America, not all of the Iranian people. So what I'm saying is, just like I started off the program, don't underestimate the impact and the influence of the gospel. Because just when you thought all hope might have been lost in Iran, look what's happening. They, among themselves, are rising up and saying, We don't want to have anything to do with this, which reminds me that if you think about the freedom movements all around the world, and historically speaking, for example, the abolitionist movement in England and America, who were the driving forces there? It was Christians. The liberty in Christ causes a desire for natural liberty.
Hey, here's some great news, and we could all use some great news for 2018. If you're worried about your healthcare costs or you feel like you're missing out because open enrollment is over, well, it's not too late to join MediShare. You can sign up anytime, and think about this. The typical savings for a family with MediShare is about $500 a month. Think what a difference that would make to your budget. Again, that $500 a month is the typical savings. It could be more or less for you. Definitely worth taking a couple minutes to find out. There are over 300,000 MediShare members sharing each other's medical bills, and something they're now loving, MediShare has a telehealth program that lets you log in and meet with a doctor in real time within the comfort of your own home. For everything from a cold or flu or for a prescription, you can save a lot of time and money, and it's free. Again, open enrollment might be over, but you can still join MediShare. Here's the number to find out more, 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23, 855-PSALM-23.
We read books so that we might understand them, but when we read the Bible, we realize that it is describing who we are and what we are.
Pastor Alistair Begg from the American Family Studios documentary, The God Who Speaks.
It's also unique in that it provides the only satisfying answer to the question of our human existence. It tells us why we're here and where we're going and why it matters. It answers in a way that is wonderfully helpful those fundamental questions of life that everybody's confronted by. And it's also historical in that the things actually happened. It's rational in that within the framework of Revelation, it makes sense. There's a cohesion to it. It asks us to put it to the test. Taste and see that the Lord is good.
Visit thegodwhospeaks.org.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes with news and commentary next. If relations between the Trump administration and Steve Bannon were frosty, now they're downright frigid. Bannon lashes out at the White House in a new book authored by Michael Wolff, Fire and Fury, Inside the Trump White House. Bannon says Donald Trump Jr. messed up when he set up that infamous meeting with a lawyer linked to the Kremlin promising dirt on Hillary Clinton. That meeting happened several months before Bannon joined the campaign. He says Trump Jr. should have called the FBI immediately. He also believes special counsel Robert Mueller is going to end up snagging the president's son. And I quote, they're going to crack Don Jr. like an egg on national TV. Bannon says the path to getting the president goes right through Paul Manafort, Don Jr., and Jared Kushner. In the vernacular of President Trump, this could be huge. I'm Todd Starnes.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Abraham Hamilton III, your host for the program. As usual, we will open the phone lines in this segment to discuss anything that we've covered in the program. Or if you have something else on your mind, maybe we'll tackle that too. The number to call if you want to be a part of the program is 888-589-8840. That number again is 888-589-8840. And I had a lot of other stuff to get to, but I was so encouraged by this report about conversions in Iran. And I believe it absolutely that the influence of Christianity in Iran is contributing. Again, I don't think it's the exclusive factor, but I think it is contributing to the penchant for freedom that is percolating in Iran. And so I just wanted to share that with you to encourage you with that information. Because if it's happening in Iran, guess what? It could happen in our country too. Another piece of information I just wanted to share, because one of the things I enjoy, I am so grateful to be a citizen of the United States of America, and I enjoy the fruit of capitalism, competition, things of that nature. And I love seeing how, for example, the smartphone companies compete and making things, and how, somebody opens up a shop, well, somebody opened up a new shop, 24-hour fitness, well, Anytime Fitness will open up. And I love seeing that. Well, this story caught my attention when it said Apple, the company Apple, I say Apple, no. The company Apple is leading the race to become the world's first company to be valued at $1 trillion. The first company to be valued at $1 trillion. Apple's valuation hit $869 billion just yesterday, and that figure was arrived at by multiplying the company's share price by the number of stock shares in circulation. So I thought that was interesting. Following right behind Apple is Alphabet, which is the parent company for Google, right at $729 billion. Following Alphabet is Microsoft at $664 billion. Then after Microsoft, you have Amazon coming in at $566 billion. So it is just interesting to see that. And you have the stock market closing in at record highs in 2017, and these companies growing in such leaps and bounds that we may see the first $1 trillion valued company. So I just thought that was interesting. Of course, I have lots more I could say about that, but I want to get to your calls and comments, so I will do that again. If you want to be a part of the program, the number to call is 888-589-8840. That number again is 888-589-8840. We'll go first to Texas, where we have Steve on the line, calling from the great state of Texas. Steve, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
Hey, praise God. I can't believe I actually got through. This must be God's blessing here. So, question for you. Yes, I know, sir. You are an attorney, and I wanted to see if I could get your advice on a situation here I've run into. I work for a very large company, and they recently evaluated their 401ks, and I went in and asked if there was something that was a biblically responsible investment that I could put my money into for my 401k, and was told no. But what I was looking at was something like what Dan Celia, I think, talks about, like the Timothy series or Timothy plans, and that I could write the board. So I did that in a pretty well thought out, I thought, the email. And anyhow, I got a response back that they were not interested. Their fiduciary responsibility was to basically provide, make sure that they were financially, the money, that they were going to make money. And basically what it boiled down to, and that they were not interested in social values or social, what do you call it? Social, anyhow, I'm kind of nervous here. But they were not interested in, Yeah, so did they say that you could not pursue that? No, it was that. Well, the other option would be basically that I, could invest in something. There's other options outside of my company's offered 401k, which I thought was interesting. So basically saying it's like you can contribute to what we have, it sounds like, or you can just not contribute at all, which, how hard would it be just to offer something for people with, Christian-based values as mine and want to invest something biblically? And I thought, I was trying to draft up a response to that, but I thought I need to sleep on this. And and then, you came on, I thought, I'm going to see if I can get a hold of Abe today. So, like I said, here we go. And I just thought, do I need to let this go? Would you let it go? Or is this something maybe that I need to try to pursue? And if so, and they say, hey, they call me in and I'm let go for that. Is there something I can do about it? I mean, I don't know. I'm just looking for some guidance here. Some counsel. Yeah. Thank you, Steve, for your call and your question. There are a couple of variables that I would obviously want to know about. One, you say it's a pretty large company. I don't know the interaction that you might have had in the past with the company. I don't know if it's a company that has hitched its wagon to what I would describe as regressive causes beforehand. So I would need more information, quite frankly, in order to answer your question. But if you would contact us, if you go to the afr.net, you'll see the information you can use to contact us and send information to me that we may be able to give you a more full answer concerning your question. But thank you very much for your call. We'll go back to the great state of Texas, where there's another Steve on the line. Steve, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. I really appreciate all you do. I'm a lawyer like you are. And what concerns me is how the American bar and lawyers in general have ignored the word posterity. which includes the unborn.
Yes.
He expressly includes the unborn. It's the old-fashioned word for the unborn. And then the first article, first section of the Constitution says all lawmaking authority, all legislative authority is vested in Congress of the United States. That eliminates judge-made law.
Yes.
Roe v. Wade is not law, just like Dred Scott was not law, and it caused a civil war.
Yeah.
And Abraham Lincoln had to defy that law in order to emancipate slaves. This is how elemental this is. It's how tragic this is. And the rule is non-consensual law is just like rape. It is terrible. It's destructive. Non-consensual sex is rape. Non-consensual law is also rape. It's government rape, and it kills people. Look at Roe v. Wade. It's not even law because Congress did not pass off on it. Also, Obergefell is not law. Supreme Court has no right to even hear it.
Steve,
so what we have is a crisis, and we need to the state legislatures, the states, everybody needs to get together to stop that.
Steve, thank you for your call and your comments. So what Steve is laying out is what used to be common knowledge in America, that we have a separation of powers in our country, and the problem that we are suffering from in the country is that the branches of power that are used or that are constitutionally mandated to keep the others in check are not operating constitutionally. So right off the bat, you have Steve's reference to the preamble of the Constitution, which says that the Constitution was promulgated to, part of its reasoning was to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. The fact that posterity is expressly mentioned in the preamble to the U.S. Constitution gives the legal foundation for the argument to be made that there is an understanding of rights being protected for those who are not yet born. That's what the word posterity means. But what has happened is that it's sort of a there's this term in trial law called jury nullification, where you could have the legal standard that's clear, but you have a jury that disagrees with the law, so to speak, and so they don't enforce it, which shouldn't occur, but those things happen in trials, unfortunately. Well, what we have is that the judiciary, and more specifically, lawyers coming from America's law schools, who are nullifying the meaning of our Constitution by simply ignoring it. One of the high crimes, in my opinion, that have been foisted upon the American people is that in interpreting and applying the Constitution, that the judiciary in our nation, they absolutely severed the Declaration of Independence and the preamble from the Constitution, which shouldn't occur. Clearly, if you read that to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, you understand, oh, wait a minute, that the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness not only applies to ourselves, but also to our posterity, which provides a clear basis for the criminalization of infanticide or baby murder, in utero or out of the womb. But we don't see that happening because, quite frankly, we have a contest of worldviews that is occurring. And so this slicing and dicing of our historical legal documents is occurring because it's like the Bible says in Psalms, for example, why does a heathen rage? Rage, not just have a mute civil objection. No, rage. There is raging against natural law theory. There is raging against the inherent dignity in human beings because the main source of that inherent dignity comes from the Imago Dei. See, inherent dignity of human beings requires those human beings to reflect on the fact that we have a creator who is the bestower of that human dignity. But we have a raging happening amongst the heathen that says that we will not reflect upon the giver or the bestower of the human dignity. So we slice and dice and have these things occur. And quite frankly, this runaway judiciary could be reined in if we had, I would say, one, a competent Congress, but then I would say two, a courageous Congress that would rein in these runaway Article 3 courts. I've explained this before, that Article 3 of the Constitution is the express constitutional authority upon which the courts have been sanctioned or created by the legislature, the state legislature. I mean, not state, the federal legislature, which means that Congress has the authority to do away with Article 3 courts, to reconstitute Article 3 courts, to add judges to the courts, or to remove judges from the courts, to impeach judges that do not obey the Constitution. All of that authority lies within the power of Congress. And I think it's high time that there is a movement amongst the American people to where we call on Congress to rein in the runaway judiciary. Back to the phone lines. We'll go back to the great state of Texas. Man, Texas is showing up today. Texas, stand up. Where we have Dwight on the line. Dwight, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Brother Hamilton. I'll make this real quick. I love your show, and I love the last thing you were just talking about. I've been trying to get with you here for a couple months. But anyway, talk about the filibuster real quick.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding the filibuster originally was the man would get up and speak until he could speak, or get up till they could speak no more. Then they would vote. You know, what do they want to do? Just make it easier on them this new way. I'm going to hang up and listen to you.
No, you're absolutely right. So the filibuster, and it's crazy. I have done an entire show, I feel like, on this. But the filibuster was originally promulgated under Woodrow Wilson. And it was a tool that was utilized by Democrats in order to thwart the will of the Republican minority at that time, to keep them from weighing in on the legislative agenda. And really, it was a tool that was used to reverse, quite frankly, the advancement of the civil rights movement of the 1860s. When people think about the civil rights movement, most people think about the 1960s, but there was a civil rights movement of the 1860s that led to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, that the filibuster was employed by a Democrat president with a Democrat majority in the Senate to crush the will of a Republican minority. After that, it was then forwarded to include the numbers, to reduce the numbers from a 67 vote majority in the Senate, which is what it was originally, because there were only 60 Democrats when that number was lowered. And as Dwight rightly pointed out, it originally required a person to be standing and speaking for the entire duration of the filibuster. The entire work of the United States Congress would come to a screeching halt in the Senate until the matter that was being filibustered was addressed. Well, with the changing of the number from 67 senators to invoke cloture and to prohibit the application or the implementation of a filibuster, with the lowering of the number from 67 to 60, it also changed the rule from requiring a person to be up and speaking to where you can have the fake filibuster, where you can say, okay, I filibuster, and we go to lunch. That's not how it worked before. And this was, I remember we had a caller who said, Abraham, I didn't realize that. The way that the filibuster works in the Senate now, you have a senator that says, oh, that bill that Brent is presenting, I want to filibuster that. And so you then have to have a vote on a motion to proceed that requires 60 votes to say, oh, we want to proceed to actually hear debate on the bill. It doesn't require any debate. It says, I want to filibuster that. And unless you have 60 senators to say, oh, no, we want to proceed to debate, then a vote is never had. And so what's happening is that the senators are using the filibuster as a tool to avoid difficult votes, because not a vote is ever taken on the merits of the bill, because the bill has been filibustered. And that has led our own AFR's own Brian Fisher to call it the fake-a-buster, because there's nothing being busted nor being filied. They just say, oh, we want to filibuster that, and nobody hears any conversation or debate on it. And so the government that was originally promulgated to be of the people, by the people, for the people, the beginning words of our preamble that says, we the people of the United States of America, we have been thwarted because we have these arcane rules, and we have this runaway rogue judiciary, and we have these law schools that have gone away from teaching Blackstonian ethics and natural law theories to advancing legal positivism, which is nothing more than macroevolutionary theory applied to our legal system. All of those things are combining to create this runaway, regressive, secular, humanistic government that is opposing the advancement of the cause of Christ.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
All